We are here. It is Monday, which time? Ugh. Wow, screwed up already. Only 10 seconds in. Folks, it's Monday. It's Monday Night Nerd. Oh, it has been a long but fun day. I hope you are all doing well. Welcome to the show. Tonight we're going to have a lot of fun. We are going to talk all about cosplay, foam, fails, and how to avoid them. I'm a cosplayer, and I have been using foam primarily for the past so many years, and we're going to talk about foam fails, things that I have messed up on and ways that you don't have to. I greatly appreciate you folks on YouTube coming on, and I appreciate you folks on TikTok as well tuning into the show. Boomster Joe says, podcast at 8 a.m. is so relaxing. What a great way to start the day. Boomster Joe, still halfway across the world, tuning into the show. I greatly appreciate that, and I appreciate everybody tuning in here on Monday. Oh, it has been kind of a weird week, kind of getting back into the world of everything. Like, we had 2 weeks of holidays, and then this is kind of the first week where we're kind of full on in the groove of everything. It's good to be back into the groove of everything and the world. Let's jump into a little bit of news, some personal stuff, and then a whole lot about movies, because there has been a whole bunch of movies and TV shows and a whole lot more this week, so we're going to jump into that right now. First off, if you did not see my stories or the post I put out on TikTok this week, I kind of been working at this desk kind of over the weekend. I have been in the world of old tech. I was able to pick up a very important cord over the past couple weeks during a Black Friday sale on Amazon, and I am now taking all of my VHS tapes and digitizing them and putting them on my hard drive. I picked up a DVD drive and I did all the DVDs. Now I'm working through my VHS, and I used to have a huge VHS collection. However, since, tech is now doubled, we had DVDs and now we have, digital everything. It has, I've pretty much got everything I need when it comes to most movies. Like, most movies I have a digital version of, but there are still some that are a little bit more of a pain in the arse to get a hold of, as well as when I was younger and still am a wrestling fan. I was more of a wrestling fan back in the day. I used to record all of the Monday Night Raws and everything I could ever think of. So I have a giant... Well, I shouldn't say giant. I have a pretty good collection of old WWE VHS, as well as the taped shows that I taped live on many VHSs. So I'm going to be going through those, finding out if there's anything special on those. I know Netflix kind of has everything right now, but I'm just going to check if there's anything in particular. I was going through some of my collection and some really cool stuff that has been coming up. I realized I have copies of very terrible movies like Kiss Meets the Phantom of the Park, which is Kiss's movie from 1970, I believe, 1972, 78. Really horrible movie, but cool that I have a VHS copy. I've never seen this on DVD. I've never seen it digital anywhere, so I thought I'm going to rip this one. And like I said, I have a whole bunch of WWE content, including the Divas in Hedonism. Yes, I used to be a lot younger and liked these movies. And actually, people make fun of me having this still because I'm like 37. This movie is actually worth a shit ton to get now, and it is very hard to find a digital copy of this, so I am going to make myself a digital copy so I have something for later, because the internet doesn't exist. But yeah, so I got a whole box behind me of different VHSs that I'm going to be going through and basically throwing on a VCR. There's a program out there that I found. It's called OBS. If you've ever done streaming like this, you know what OBS is. Basically stream it to your monitors and then you record it, and that is what I'm doing. I'm kind of going through a whole bunch. I think I've got about 5 so far, and I've got about 20 more to go. So that will be my next big project. So let's talk about movies, because there's been a bunch of Marvel things going on over for the past couple weeks that I don't think a lot of people are talking about. We're going to go through the one where everyone's talking about, and that is the Avengers Doomsday trailer. I told you guys back when the leaks came out, I did not want to talk about it because I don't like talking about leak things, because if we're supposed to know it, we're supposed to know it. If we're not, we're not. Whether Marvel had planned on putting these trailers out or not, I don't know, but they did. So let's talk about it. First off, let's talk about Captain America is back in the world. And I don't mind talking about these, folks. If you're a Marvel fan and you've spent any moment on any social media platform, you know about these. And if you don't, I'm sorry. I don't know how the hell you don't, because I cannot scroll through any comic book social media page without seeing these, so sorry if I'm spoiling anything. Captain America, Steve Rogers, is coming back in Avengers Doomsday. Out of all the Avengers, everyone knows that I am a big Captain America fan. I still bawl my eyes out at the end of Endgame because of how perfect an ending that is to the Captain America character. How do I feel about Cap coming back? I don't really care. And I don't care because I feel the exact same way that I feel about the next trailer that came out, and that is the X-Men trailer. The X-Men trailer came out where we got a video of Professor X, we got a little clip of Magneto, and we got, finally, Cyclops using his optic blast, which anybody that has sent me that video, because I've said over the years I've wanted to do a Cyclops cosplay. Cyclops in the Marvel Universe is the Leonardo of the TMNT world. He has a one-hit weapon that he never uses unless he's training or he has to accidentally fire it at a train station roof. He never uses his optic blast in the movies, and it is such a piss off. So to see him actually using it for once, even though it's still just rage, it's not actually doing anything to hit anybody, it is cool to see that. However, just like Cap, just like the X-Men, and just like any of these cameo or old characters coming back, I feel we're going to get a somewhat Deadpool Wolverine feel with these characters where they will be, and the Thor one. I totally forgot about the Thor one. They will probably be obliterated by the end of the movie. Like, I'm sorry, half of these actors are pretty old. Half of these actors are kind of close to retirement just from movies in general, not just Marvel stuff. So I do not feel I should put a lot of heart and effort into these movies. I've been telling everybody, I got a feeling Doomsday is just going to obliterate all of them in one shot. Because it was hard enough getting all the MCU into Endgame and do it properly. Now you have almost double those characters, and you're trying to bring back a lot of old characters, which when Endgame came out, you still had a lot of people who knew the X-Men and all that. Now you're even further away from it. I think they're going to have a little more trouble this time, and I don't think it's going to go as well as they'd hoped. I'm going to be there. I'm going to be there opening night. I'm really excited, but I just do not think it's going to do as well as Marvel thinks it's going to, which sucks. But I feel like it's just going to be done. They're all going to die at the end, because I don't think you're going to keep them in for unless because we're going to do Secret Wars, they survived to Secret Wars, and then the new castings for all of them start kind of at the same time. Maybe they do that. But honestly, I think this is going to be the end for Chris Hemsworth and Chris Evans and all them, because why are we keeping them around? They've done everything they can. So, Pretty Nerdy says, I've been under a rock and have not seen this. Well, sorry for spoiling. Boomster Joe says, yeah, I feel the same way. I dread seeing short cameos, and I think it's going to be that way. I think it's just going to be them walking by going, hi, or it's going to be the Endgame shot where they'll all be there, and Doom's just going to blow them all away. Which sucks, but I got a feeling that's what's going to happen. In other Marvel news, which nobody's talking about, because I don't think anybody even watched it, they are doing a Wonder Man TV show. Did anybody know about that? I'd heard rumors about it, but they finally released a full trailer for it, and I'm actually kind of interested in it. Wonder Man, I don't have a ton of knowledge of Wonder Man. We are getting into very deep cut superhero takes. My knowledge only goes so far. I've got a feeling he's super strength and a whole bunch of other stuff. He is played by Yahya Abdul-Mateen, which I am interested in because I actually really like him as an actor. Yahya Yahya Abdul-Mateen was Black Manta in Aquaman. He was in Candyman. He was also Dr. Manhattan in the Watchmen TV show. I like him as an actor, and I'm really interested to see how he does in Wonder Man. What I do know from Wonder Man, and they show it in the trailer, he is a struggling actor, and there was once a Wonder Man TV show, and they're going to be rebooting it, and he is going to be the star, or is at least trying to be the star. And as Rado in chat says, Trevor is back. Yes, the individual who played the Mandarin in Iron Man 2, he is back. Trevor Slattery is back as Trevor Slattery, kind of being the... I don't know if he's mentoring him or he's kind of trying to jump on his coattails or what, but I'm interested because Trevor Slattery is a great character, and I'm interested to see what they're going to do with that. Again, it's not a... I think... The Marvel Universe is, yes, I know it's you, Alex, but your thing says Rado on there, so I'm going by what your name is. It's like your character name. Your character name is Rado. Your real name is Alex. With the Marvel Universe now, I think we're getting pretty thin, and I think we're getting into some pretty deep-cut characters that... it's kind of hard. I can see Marvel's thought process, though, because if you go back into the world of the Marvel Universe, back when they first started this, Iron Man was not an A character. Iron Man and all of them, though, the Avengers was like a B, C team. Your big hitters were your Spider-Man, your X-Men, and etc., but those were brought over to the Sony universe. That's what Sony grabbed a hold of and started making movies. So when the Marvel Cinematic Universe came in, they were using the BC players. And that's great because Robert Downey Jr. was able to bring Iron Man into the A slot, Captain America, Hulk, etc. However, I think we're really getting into some deep cuts where even as someone who grew up with comics and loves the MCU and grew up with Marvel and DC, I'm getting a little like, I don't know who the hell this character really is. I've seen him, but I don't know a lot about him. So it's hard to kind of get an audience behind it that even comic book fans are kind of going like, he seems cool. So I'll watch it, but I do think it's we're getting a little thin on some of these characters. Speaking about movies, we're going to talk about a horror movie, and then we're going to jump back into comics. Lee Cronin's The Mummy. If you don't know, this is not the Brendan Fraser Mummy. This is a new interpretation of The Mummy. This is not the Tom Cruise movie. The trailer dropped today. And I have been hearing rumblings about this movie. For some reason, all of these Universal horror movies people are all jumping at these properties and are making multiple versions of it. As you know, we have like 3 Frankensteins going on right now. We now have 2 Mummy movies. We have Lee Cronin's Mummy, and we will have Brendan Fraser's Mummy. Obviously, Brendan Fraser's Mummy will be based similar around the old Mummy movies that we all love from the 2000s. Lee Cronin's Mummy is going to be way more horror-based. Lee Cronin is the director of the last Evil Dead. Let's call it Evil Dead 5 Electric Boogaloo. I don't remember what it's called. It's not my Evil Dead. I loved the Ash, Evil Dead 1, 2, Army of Darkness. These last 2... Actually, I haven't seen the last one. The one before that was way too horror for me. It wasn't really a fun movie to watch. I was not excited about this because, like I said, this individual, Lee Cronin, is very horror. He is very gory. So I was like, oh no, we're going to do this with The Mummy. I gotta admit, I like the trailer. It came out about 6 hours ago. I watched it about an hour ago when I had the chance. It is very horror, but I feel like it's going to be more ghost and more spooky type horror than a bloodbath. And I'm interested in that because I feel like you could easily show the mummification process back in the Egyptian times and how gruesome it can be at points. But it seems like this is going to be more of a ghost story. And I'm interested in that. I'm very interested in that. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm going to give it some time because I got a feeling there's going to be another trailer coming out in a little while. But it caught my attention, so I'm interested, and we'll see where it goes. There's tons of horror remakes out this year, I hear. Yeah, I've heard that. I've heard, what do we got? We've got Frankenstein. We've got a werewolf movie, if I remember correctly. I think we have another Dracula or vampire movie coming out. Yeah, it is a type of movie that's very cheap to make. So it's sort of like your old school Wild West movies where you really don't need a ton of stuff. You need a setting, you need a bunch of characters that are willing to die, and a killer. They're really easy to make. So the only difference right now is we're using a lot of the old properties and trying to give them new life, which is great, but some of them aren't doing that great. But we'll have to see. Clayface 2, yes, and thank you, Shinobi. Yes, Clayface is also coming out for the DC Universe, which is interesting. That is not a character I would have wanted in a movie, but it might work. It might work, especially because Clayface's backstory is very tortured. He's not Madam Web, Craven type movies where these people have just kind of been villains. Venom as well, where it's just been like they're pretty much villains, but we're trying to make him a good version, an anti-hero. Clayface can kind of be written as an anti-hero because he is a lot of circumstance around how he becomes the Clayface character, how he is an actor, and that's how he's able to transform his body and his voice and everything into different people. So I could see that one a little bit. Remakes are easier to relate than for the younger generation. Yes, I will agree with that, Boomster, but also it is better for the studios. It is much easier to get people into the theater with a property that's already got life than bringing people in with a new property. I remember back in the day, I would say about a decade ago, I remember reading an article from, I want to say, the New York Times, and they were talking to a studio head. And at that point, they said, other than 5 types of movies, they pretty much could guarantee that whatever movie the studio put into the cinemas was not going to do well and would probably flop. Bond, Marvel, animated, Mission Impossible, and there was one other. Marvel and DC was kind of together. So yeah, it was like Secret Agent, animated, comic book, and something else. Yeah, there's 4 or 5. And they're like, anything else we can kind of say it's not going to work. So it's, and David, I was about to say, there's no more original ideas. There isn't. But I've always said, there may not be original ideas, but you can do different versions and different takes on things that have already existed. For example, The Invisible Man is one I always bring up. I never really cared for The Invisible Man as a Universal monster movie. But the one that came out around the pandemic that was a horror movie where a guy figured out how to become the Invisible Man, and they shot it where it was a lot of shadows and it was perceived that the Invisible Man was just standing there the whole time. That was a cool concept. That was a very different take on a non-original idea. So you can easily take different versions of already done properties. The problem is that everybody's taking these properties and wanting to make them exclusive and wanting them to be like, we're the only ones that can do this. And it just becomes kind of a pain in the arse because then no one could take those ideas and do anything else with them. Marcy also brought up something else. Having so sick of the multiverse movies, yes, everything has to be connected now where it has to be an extended universe. That is very much something that the studios have wanted to do because that, again, will take different properties and bring different people into a franchise that they may have an interest in one, but maybe they need to be a part of the second one. It's very comic book. Like, that's the idea of the multiverse. Like, that is a comic book thing from ever. Comics have been doing that for decades where they will have a big crossover event and you have to read, if you've been reading Spider-Man, you then have to read X-Men and you have to read the Avengers because you have to get that whole story. Movies have just taken that because Marvel did it so well. I don't see The Invisible Man doing well. The Invisible Man didn't do that bad. I think a lot of people, when it came out during, I think it was 2020, it didn't do that bad in theaters, but it's done well since then. It's done very well on streaming because I think just a lot of people weren't really wanting to go see it in theaters and give it a chance. But I'm these things are weird. These we're especially living in a world where do we want to go to the cinemas or do we want to stay at home and watch streaming? It's a weird dynamic now. So we'll have to wait and see. And on the talking about movies and talking about DC and all that, we cannot do this podcast without talking about my favorite Batman villain has been cast finally in the Matt Reeves Batman 2 movie. Harvey Dent, Two-Face, has been cast as Sebastian Stan. Yes, Two-Face will be played by Bucky Barnes. This is something that I'm okay with. I'm perfectly okay with this. As I've said 100 times on this podcast, Harvey Dent Two-Face is one of the most frustratingly underused characters in the Batman universe. Everyone loves Joker, and he has been done to death, in my opinion. I'm so tired of the Joker. I personally love Two-Face as a character. I think he has a way better backstory with Batman because they were best friends, because Harvey Dent and Bruce Wayne worked so well together to try and clean up Gotham. And in the end, Harvey, in most storylines, knows who Batman is. He knows it's Bruce Wayne. And Batman is unable to save Harvey Dent from getting scarred and becoming Two-Face. I think that is a much more traumatic, much more personal story than Joker being anarchy and Batman being justice. And I feel like it is so frustrating to have two incarnations of that character and being overshadowed. Tommy Lee Jones being overshadowed by Jim Carrey, which Jim Carrey did an incredible job, and Tommy Lee Jones did not know how to play that character. But also having him in The Dark Knight. One of the main reasons why I'm so frustrated with The Dark Knight is because you had such a good version of Harvey Dent, Two-Face, and you barely bloody used him. You focused everything on Joker, and you shouldn't. Booster Joe says, is it true that we will see Two-Face and Joker in that movie? Two-Face, yes. And as far as I know, Harvey Dent's wife will be played by Scarlett Johansson, which is interesting because that means they're probably going to keep him as Harvey Dent for a while. I would not be surprised if he becomes Two-Face late in the movie and maybe he becomes the villain later, like in a third movie. Yes, Boomster, thank you very much. And yes, I have heard rumors that they are going to have Joker in it. I hope they don't, personally, because as I said, he is just so overused. We've now seen him 1, 2, 3... We've seen him on the TV show, like Gotham. We've seen him pretty much everywhere, and it's just getting sad. I'm tired of seeing the same characters, especially with Batman, who says such a big rogues gallery. I saw so many people talking about who should be the villain in number 2. Who should be the villain in Matt Reeves' Batman? And I'm like, folks, we have the end of the movie, Gotham is frozen. Gotham is frozen. No, Gotham is flooded. Gotham is flooded. You have two options. You can either go freeze, because you can freeze the entire city, which is an amazing visual, or you could do Killer Croc. And if you have a Killer Croc movie, think about think about playing games like Arkham City, where you're floating over the rivers of Gotham that have been drowned in water. And just going by and thinking that Killer Croc could be swimming underneath you. That is such... Phone just fell. That is such a cool idea that I think they could really run with. They could really have so much fun with. Going way too safe with some of these characters when they have such a giant... Honestly, if they keep him as a third movie or they keep him in the background for a second movie, I will tolerate that, because it's not them just going Joker. Let's just do Joker. It's giving that character time to breathe. And I don't mind that. If he's already in Arkham and something has happened that we haven't seen, that's fine. And if you want to leave him for the third movie, I'll give you the third movie. But I feel like if you pigeonhole him in and have another multi-villain movie, it's too much. Boomster Joe, is this Patterson's movie? Yes, this is Robert Pattinson's movie. This is the sequel to that one. So, we'll see. We'll see. I think that's it. I think that's it for the news. If you guys are still here, I greatly appreciate that. If you can hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, hit that share button, and all those things. And you folks on TikTok, if you could hit that follow button, I greatly appreciate it. We are here every single Monday night at 7 p.m. and we do the podcast. If you want to be a part of the show and be in the comments, go over to Myers Corp Cosplay on YouTube, and that's where you could hang out with all these amazing people like Marcy, like Boomster, like Shinobi, like Pretty Nerdy Crystal, like Alex, and everyone else. Sponsor, as always, you know the sponsor. Sponsor my beautiful, loving, amazing, incredible wife. She is always my sponsor here on the podcast. I greatly appreciate her. She is out having fun with her friends tonight, and I am here doing the podcast and hanging out with the animals. Hun, I love you. You will always be my sponsor. All right, let's jump into it. As I take a giant swig of water. Let's talk about foam, folks. Let's talk about EVA foam. Let's talk about cosplay because, hey, guys, I'm a cosplayer. This is something I've thought about for a while because I remember being, a young cosplayer, a wee cosplayer back in the day, and not really having the tutorials, not having the knowledge of foam cosplay that I needed. I really did not have any real tutorials online. YouTube was newer, like it was still entertainment. It wasn't tutorial based. Pinterest was okay. I feel like you can pretty much scan anywhere now, especially with AI, and find different things. But there are still some people that I've talked to, some new cosplayers who they're so excited to get into this that they just jump both feet in and they make mistakes. And it's sad to see the same mistakes happen that I did way back in the day. So I want to sit here and talk a few minutes about some things that I learned back in the day. We're going to go through a couple points that you need to think about before you start building your cosplay and actually getting into the foam. And I'm going to give you some examples of things that I screwed up on and how it cost me a lot of time and a lot of material and most of all, a lot of money because I spent a whole bunch of funds that I shouldn't have, especially back in those days, because back in the days when I first started cosplaying, I was also going to college. I was not working full time. I was going to college. I was working part time, but thankfully my wife saw how much I loved cosplay and how much of an art form it was, that she didn't support me, but she also didn't push me away. We knew we had a budget. We knew we only had so much money to work with. But she still encouraged me to try, and she encouraged me to make mistakes, which I was always terrible at making mistakes, and I always took them to heart, and I didn't do well with it. But because I made those mistakes in cosplay, I am able to deal with things going wrong now, and I'm a lot better with it. So let's jump into a couple things. The biggest thing that I ran into when I first started cosplaying that frustrated the daylights out of me was I would see something. I would see a character, and we're gonna use one of my cosplays that I don't talk about that often because I wasn't happy with it, and that was Deathstroke. I did a Deathstroke cosplay back in the day. If you go onto my YouTube channel and check my performances, I did do a performance on the stage of Fan Expo back in the day, and I did not plan this cosplay well. And that is the first thing I want to talk about is you have to make sure to plan things accordingly. I remember seeing a toy of Deathstroke or it was a toy. No, it was the New 52 Deathstroke comic book. That's what it was. And I saw it and I just went, cool, let's make it. And as I said at the beginning, there wasn't a lot of tutorials out there. Like nowadays, if there's a character that has seen any type of medium, a comic book, a video game, anything, and if you like that character, you can probably go online and find someone who has cosplayed that, or at least can show you things that they've done. I did not have that chance, so I saw this comic and was like, cool, go. And Pretty Nerd Crystal said, wait, I shouldn't be winging it like I always do. There's winging it, and then there's what I did. So I know we've talked while we've been working on stuff, and I know what you mean by winging it. Me winging it, well, let's back up. Crystal is a seamstress, whatever you want to call it. She uses patterns. Like, she will go find a pattern for a dress or a skirt or something like that, and she will use that pattern and lay it out and cut her pieces. I, on Deathstroke, looked at the cosplay and went, cool, where's my foam? I didn't even use a paper pattern. I just went and grabbed whatever foam I had and I started cutting out all the pieces that I thought I needed. And at the time, the foam that's available now, where you can get in the rolls and different thicknesses, that wasn't available back then. I had floor mats, and that's it. So I went with my enthusiasm and I started cutting up floor mats, realizing not until I did my first test fit, which wasn't a test fit, it was just I finished the piece. The thing was huge on me and it was bulky, way too bulky. But at that point, after I've already cut up 3-4 floor mats and put a whole bunch of time and effort into it, I couldn't really say no. I couldn't really be like, not gonna do it. So if you're in the cosplay world now and you want to start building something with foam, make sure to use some guide. Whether you make it yourself, whether you're buying a pattern from somebody, whether you're finding ones free online, wherever, plan your things out early, plan your things out first before you start cutting into your foam. Plan everything out on paper specifically. I have taken a bunch of patterns and I've created a few of my own. They're in the other room because I'm building my new cosplay. I'm then going to take those paper patterns. Once I've made sure they kind of fit pretty good, I'm then going to put them onto like the Bristol board that you used to get when you were a kid and you're doing big posters. Buy a couple sheets of that, lay them down, cut out all your patterns in the Bristol board. Then you can lay it on yourself and tape it properly without the tape ripping the paper. And you can kind of get a feel for your sizing, how it's going to feel and look when you make it out of foam. This is the easiest way to get a feel without, going too deep into the foam. When you get to that foam, however, remember, this is something I tell everybody if you're ever working with foam for the first time. If you are doing something that has any thickness to it, how do you allow for thickness? Thank you, Dave. It's like you knew I was going there. Yeah, so this is a more advanced thing. So once you lay your paper pattern on, it may feel good, but then you get into things like thickness. If you lay something on yourself and a 2mm foam is going to sit a lot different than a 10mm foam. So what you're going to do is, if you're going to use something like a floor mat, you may notice the floor mats have like those puzzle pieces on the side and it has the strip on the edges. Or if you're buying it in rolls, cut out a strip about yay long or about yay thick. Make yourself a ruler out of that foam. That way you can lay it on yourself and see what that thickness is going to look like. I have a couple in the other room for different thicknesses. The 2mm, not really, but once I get to 5, I've got a 5 and I've got a 10 that kind of gives you that thickness. So check out online if you don't understand what I'm talking about. Foam rulers for cosplay, those help you understand the thicknesses of the foam because yes, 2mm thick versus 10mm thick is a big difference. It could go from this to this. So make sure to prep that stuff properly. Another thing on here I put in my notes because this is one I always bring up. It's not foam related, but it's kind of foam related. I remember back in the day, I wanted to make a Power Ranger helmet. I wanted to make a White Ranger Power Ranger helmet, and I I should have known when I was building this that it was the wrong thing to do, but I was watching a guy do a tutorial, and the way he built it was he built the frame out of cardboard, which looked great. He duct taped, kind of all the pieces, because it wasn't one solid piece. It was a couple different pieces. Duct taped them together. And then he used Bondo to get the shape, because Bondo, if you've never used it, it is a malleable substance that you usually used on cards, and you can smooth it out and sand it out. I made this helmet out of cardboard and Bondo, and again, didn't prep properly. This helmet was about this big and had about that thick of Bondo over the entire thing. I clearly remember being on our apartment balcony, sanding like mad to get this thing to look right. And finally, after about a week, my wife comes out and she's like, "You're never going to get this the way you want. Just throw it out." And it was hard to throw out after a week of just sitting out there sanding, trying to get it as smooth as possible. It was such a waste. But again, should have prepped properly, should not have jumped in as much as I did. Rado said, Bondo fixes everything. If it doesn't, you are not using enough. That's honestly what it felt like, where I just was like, I'll just keep layering it on. See, I did that with my Ranger helmet, but fiberglass stuff. Yeah, I wasn't getting into fiberglass. JS asked me about that the one time. He's like, "You ever done fiberglass?" I'm like, no way in hell am I going down there. Point number 2, using the wrong foam. We kind of talked about this just a few minutes ago. Really kind of seeing what the thickness of the foam is going to feel like, because as I've said over in a couple other videos talking about foam, if you are hard off and you don't know where to source your foam and you don't understand thicknesses and stuff, you may jump right to the foam mats because that's the easiest thing available. That's what I did. I know several other cosplayers who've done that as well. I get it and I understand the ease of it. However, it doesn't always work out as well as you hoped. Big thing again, the structure may look kind of bulky. Another thing that people don't think about especially until they get to a convention, breathability. There is a big difference in breathability between a 2mm and a 10mm. If you're in a 2mm cosplay, 2mm foam, 4mm foam, it ain't that bad to walk around. You walk around covered in 10mm foam, you are gonna get so warm so fast, which is another thing that I tell everybody. If you're ever building foam cosplays, if you're ever doing something with a lot of foam, do not just test fit your cosplay in your house. Go onto your balcony, go into your backyard. If you want to, and I highly recommend it, I know some people don't like it, walk around your neighborhood. I get it, you don't want your neighbors maybe seeing what your cosplay is. I get that, but I'm telling you, go for a walk, go outside in your cosplay, because in here, it's air conditioned. It ain't that bad. As soon as you step into a con, though, there's a lot of people and a lot of heat. So if you're covered in 10mm foam, your temperature is going to skyrocket. And I can tell you from my experience, I don't do well in heat, and my anxiety skyrockets if I'm way too warm. So make sure to do your prep. Make sure to look at what size foam you should be getting. Another one over there, and you guys can't really see it, my old Arsenal cosplay. I love that, and I have so many people telling me I should bring Arsenal back. I hate that armor, because that was the last time I built armor where I was like, all I have is foam mats available. It is way too thick. It is way too bulky. It needed to be a lot thinner. That's why I hate it. I like the things I did to it, but it is still way too bulky, way too big. So make sure to find the right foam. Do your research with other people that may have built these cosplays. Make things a lot easier on yourself. Kind of going on what we just talked about. Poor measuring, skipping the test fits. I cannot stress it enough. Test fit your cosplays in every version. Test fit when you first make your patterns. It doesn't have to be exact, but get a good idea of how they're going to sit, how they're going to lay. Once you start cutting things out of foam, test fit them once you've built all the pieces and kind of you can maybe temporarily put them together. Maybe not glue them, but just throw some tape on it, kind of get how it feels. Test fit it once you've got the pieces assembled. Test fit it once you've painted it. Because, man, I have spent so much time building a piece, so much time building a prop, a helmet, a chest piece, a bracer, and getting to that point and going, okay, I'm ready to paint, and then realizing it's too small. It's too small. It doesn't sit right. I love my wife. She is a sponsor of the show. I love my wife. But I have gone downstairs and shown her cosplay pieces too many times, and she has gone way too small or way too big or that doesn't sit right and I'm frustrated when she says it, but I know I'm looking at her going, it's probably because I did not test fit it properly. I didn't test fit it too many times. What parts of a build should never be permanently attached until after multiple fits? Any piece. If it's something structurally that isn't going to be attached, like if you're building a helmet, try and build it out of, paper or as I said, take those paper patterns, put them onto construction board or something like that with a little bit more rigidity. That's a word. Kind of get a feel of how it is as close as you can. If you can do your entire cosplay in a paper pattern and kind of get that laying and how it feels, that is the best thing. If you don't have to glue it and you can kind of get a feel for what it looks like, if you build a paper pattern on your arm and you're like, okay, this is supposed to be a bracer and it's supposed to go around it's supposed to go around and, pinch on the other side and that's how you're going to connect it. If your paper pattern goes over, okay, then I got to pull that paper pattern back a bit. If it only goes to here, okay, well then I got to push it a little further. Make your patterns, make all those things early before you start cutting into foam, because I'm telling you, it's much better to have a recycling bin full of scrap paper and scrap cardboard than having a giant garbage bag full of foam pieces that you've cut out that just don't fit. Because with the paper patterns, you can add and subtract all you want. Like I've taken a bunch of Kamui cosplay patterns that kind of have a similar look to what I'm going to be doing for Darius, and I've built them, and then I've gone, okay, let's tape another piece on behind that pattern that's kind of over the edge of it and draw more of it and kind of make it a little bigger. And then if that's too big, bring it in a bit, cut it up. Okay, went a little too small. Let's make it a little bigger. You can't do that with foam. Once you kind of cut it, you can maybe add a little bit, but then you're dealing with seams and you're dealing with glue and it just becomes a pain in the ass. Do everything as best you can. Get it on yourself as best you can with paper before you even get to that foam gluing. Once you get to the foam, do as much as you can without gluing it secure. If you want to test fit the glue and you kind of want to get a feel for it, just use super glue. Just use a little bit of hot glue. Don't contact cement it, because once you get into the contact, then it starts becoming solid and it becomes kind of a pain in the ass to get rid of. That's my advice. Any more advice? Don't hesitate to ask. I'm more than happy to help. But yeah, I've wasted so much material on just not test fitting things properly and spending so much time fighting so many pieces, trying to make them fit, or just they're too small and I'll add a little bit. Just build everything out of pattern first, go from there. Trust Mike, he is the man. Oh, I am not. I've just screwed up enough. That's all it is. I'm not the man. I've just screwed up. I've screwed up enough that I'm like, please don't waste as much money as I have. I've spent way too much time getting frustrated. I've way too much time throwing stuff in the garbage going, it's not worth it. Like, there's so many easier ways. And all it is, it's me not taking that time. And it's similar to when I'm shooting. Like, I'm horrible at creating content for the channel, for TikTok, for anything while I'm cosplaying, because I feel like once I start in front of a camera, I feel like I need to entertain. I feel like I need to go faster because I'm trying to make sure you guys stay interested, and then I'm screwed. And I make mistakes and I forget to do things. Even last night, Crystal and I were yakking over Instagram for a bit, and I printed out like 3 patterns and we were just chit-chatting about stuff. And then I got to the table and I'm like, I didn't scale these properly. I did them at 100%. They were supposed to be at 110. All those pieces of paper went in the garbage. Let's print them out again. It happens. But take your time, take a breath, enjoy the process, do the prep now, because at the end, if you don't, you'll be way more frustrated better. What about plastic, cling wrap, and duct tape? So that is something that I've seen a lot of cosplayers do. I have never had success with it. And I literally tried it 2 nights ago. I don't know what I'm doing wrong, but I've seen Kamui, I think even Freakish Workshop does it. I've never been able to get it to work properly. It's always laid out weird. And I don't know if it's I'm not cutting the pattern, or I'm not sectioning off the pattern into enough pieces, or what. But I know it works, and I know it is user error. I'm well aware it's user error, but I've never been able to get it to work properly. I know I should, because it would make my life a hell of a lot easier. But yeah, I've never been able to pull it off properly. I literally made a leg pattern. Yeah, Saturday I made a leg pattern. And cling wrap, duct tape, drew it out, cut it out, laid it on paper, and then I laid it on the table and was just looking at it. And I'm like, okay, well, if I cut there, or I do a dart there, and I'm just like, garbage. Okay, I'm no idea what I'm doing. So I do know I need to do more research, and that is a very good technique to use, but it's just not for me yet. More that I need to learn. Maybe that'll be something I need to learn in 2026. One of the biggest things that I run into, and we just kind of quickly talked about it, and it is probably the thing that I've had to fight the most over the past 10 plus years of cosplaying, is rushing a build. And this really, I was able to help this a lot with not putting an end date on my cosplays. And what I mean by that is, back when I first started cosplaying, the only convention I'd go to is Fan Expo Canada. And when I go to Fan Expo Canada, I knew I had a date. So let's say it's August 25th, 26th. I would go, okay, I have X number of months to get a cosplay done. I will start building it in March. And I would work. Something would happen. I wouldn't be able to get it done. And then I would rush. And I hated it, because I would get to the point where I'd be like 2 weeks before the con, I'd be rushing, I'd be just con crunching like crazy, and it was frustrating, and I knew I was making mistakes. So now, cosplaying is just the thing that I do. And if I am aiming for something, like I'm trying to get Darius done for May, I'm starting now. But if I get to May and it doesn't happen, and I don't have it done, it's not the end of the world. I'm going to be going to other conventions. There is going to be an Anime North next year as well. It is not the end of the world. And that is something I've told so many people that have asked me, how do I deal with con crunching? How do I deal with rushing? Don't put yourself in a position to do that. Don't put yourself in a position where you have to rush. Plan your stuff out. If you think it's going to be if your cosplay is going to be 4 months, you think I can do this in 4 months, plan for 8. Because if you get starting at 8 and you get 4 months in and you're done, you're early. You're done. Cool. You can maybe do some fine touches. You can maybe change some things or add some things. Don't crunch. Don't push yourself too hard. You've got so much time. I said it to somebody over the weekend. We overestimate how much we can do in a year, and we underestimate how much we can do in a decade. Like, I look back at the past 7 years of really doing cosplay and pushing content and stuff, and I can't believe how much I've done. But I know if I sat there in 2020 when the pandemic was happening and be like, this is such a big hill to do, and I'm like, yeah, if you try and do that in a year, it's gonna be overwhelming. If you let yourself get some breathing room and give yourself some time, because life happens. People get sick. You may get injured or something. You don't know. Give yourself that breathing room. Give yourself that time to not feel like you're getting rushed. David in chat says, what kind of knives do you use? X-Acto knives. There's thick ones and there's thin ones. There's ones with the really thick blade that's like that. There's really thin ones that are like that. I tell anybody, if you're just starting out, it doesn't matter. Both work great. If you're getting more advanced in your cosplay, the thicker ones are better for straight lines. The thinner ones have some flex to it, which will allow you to do circles and curves a little better than the thick ones. You can easily get one. You can get the ones with the breakable ends to it. I personally, box cutters, yes, technically they're box cutters. I say no because when I worked at Toys R Us, we had box cutters. They were just little push out ones that had like a little thing on it. But yeah, X-Acto knives that have like the extended blade. You can just break the ends off, which most people do. I advise, though, to save money on blades. You can get what's called a sanding stone. I've posted it a couple times on some stories. It is a sanding stone. It's about this big. You can pick that. Yes, David, I'm about to get it. Yeah. See, David, I'm beating you to it. Yeah, sanding stone. It's got sort of a rougher side and a smoother side. Just back and forth across the blade. It'll sharpen it back up. You can keep your blades a little while longer because foam dulls the daylights out of your blades. So make sure you're using a very, very sharp blade when you're cutting your foam, and don't be afraid to sharpen it more every time you cut because, yeah, before you know it, they will just dull out instantly. Yeah, when it comes to rushing your builds, like I think a lot of people also, because of social media, because of places like TikTok, because of Instagram and such, we see so many people posting about things and posting about their new cosplays. We feel like people are waiting for us. Like, what's Myers gonna have next year? Is he gonna work on a new cosplay? I want to see what he's working on. I'm sorry to break everyone's bubble. You're not Taylor Swift. 99% of people are not waiting for you to drop a new cosplay. Some do. Your friends and family might. But 95% of the people that you interact with on social, they don't care. They don't care when you're going to be posting those things because they're doing their own things. People don't post their failures. Yes, people don't post their failures. I've posted a couple of them. The stuff I have thrown out, I should have taken photos, but I'm too busy thinking of how to do it better that I don't show it. But yeah, you should post your failures. I try my best to post failures every once in a while because it happens. It happens. One of my biggest failures, and this is one I keep right over there. You can't see it. It is kind of tucked behind right now because I don't have a spot for it. But my wife used to cosplay. When I met her, she was cosplaying more than I was. She was doing a League of Legends character called Star Guardian Lux. And she was really excited to get this cosplay done for, I can't remember the convention. It's not around anymore. But either or. She was super excited. She built the cosplay, and she asked me, because my big thing at the time was doing props. She wanted me to do Star Guardian Lux's staff. So the staff, if you're not a League of Legends fan, is a big long pole, and on either end it has a star, and it has sort of a symbol, and it has like angel wings coming out of the sides on both ends. And she asked me, can I build that? And I said, sure, of course I can. This will be no problem. Final last words. Yeah, it was a giant pain in the ass. Basically, what my vision of it and what her vision were very different. She wanted things like lights. She wanted it to have a certain design to it. She wanted to use certain materials, not the materials I wanted to use. And I vividly remember the night before the con, I finished the staff and I was so happy with it. Looking at it now, it is a ton of problems, but I was so happy with it. And I remember I was in the living room. I'd finished working on it. I walked into the bedroom where she was gaming, and I showed her the staff. And she said, rightfully, "It looks terrible. I hate it." And I was devastated. And I said, "Why?" And she said, "I can tell you rushed it." And I did. I rushed it so much. I used Warbler on it, and the Warbler there was holes in the Warbler. The wings looked terrible. I then spent the whole night remaking that staff from scratch. And even when I was finished in the morning, it still didn't look that great. But it was better. And it is something that she hasn't worn that cosplay since. But I have kept that staff as a reminder to myself of do not rush. Because there's nobody in the end that's going to be happy with it. I'm not going to be happy with it, especially if it's something that's my own cosplay. If it's for someone else, they're not going to be happy. They may say they're cool with it just to be nice. But in the end, we're all going to know that I rushed. So take your time. Don't wait until the last minute to do stuff. Some people do well with it. My wife is very big on, she likes waiting. She loves that pressure of time crunch. I can't do it. I hate it. So anybody that asks me, take your time, enjoy the process, don't rush. The last thing, we're going to kind of combine two of them, and that is just bad technique. Gluing, sanding, cutting, all these things. Practice these things before you start building your cosplays. Like, the amount of foam that I've just used to cut up just to get an idea of how things work, it was a lot of material, but it was so worth it because I know if I mess these things up if I mess things up on the cosplay, it's going to take me 3 times as long to build it again, and I'm going to be so frustrated that I didn't practice. Practice your cutting on spare pieces of foam. Practice using the thicker blades compared to the thinner blades because those thinner blades have got a bit of a flex to it, and if you're pushing down on the wrong part of it, you're going to see that blade flex, and your cut's going to go off, and you're going to mess that up. Glue. I've seen so many people make mistakes about stuff like contact cement. Contact cement, you don't need a ton of contact cement for your cosplay props. That stuff is built to last, and it's only needing a little bit. You should just be putting a little bit on either side of your cosplay pieces, letting them dry. If you start gooping it on there, it's not going to set properly. And if it does set properly, it's going to be like if you layer spray foam. If you ever used spray foam and had to spray foam an area, let's say outside your house, if you just go nuts with it, the outside will harden, but the air will not get on the inside, and the inside will not harden. It will stay goopy. Contact cement's the exact same way. If you put too much of it on there, that first layer on the top will dry, and it will work, but it won't hold because all that glue underneath is still wet, and it will come apart instantly. Do you mean totally dry? I do mean totally dry. When you use contact cement, just use a very thin amount. If you put it on there, you should not be able to see the yellowish of the glue. You should just see a sheen of the glue. And you know when it's dry because that sheen is gone. I hate how long contact cement takes. Myers could tell you how much I complain. Well, it's because you're not a foam smith. You're used to sewing, and sewing, if you're good at it, can take that long. Contact cement takes time to dry. It takes time, and it takes practice. I did the exact same thing when I started. I gooped the daylights out of it, and it just did not work. And this goes back to your test fitting. If you put all that stuff on, and you're like, it's good, and you paint it, it's good, and you get to a con, and you put it on, and it breaks because that glue hasn't set properly, there's no one to blame but yourself. You should have test fitted beforehand. Same with cutting. Like, make sure to practice all that stuff beforehand. If you cut using a bad cutting technique, you then may think, well, I'll just sand down the edge instead. The amount of times that I started and I would just go, well, I'll just get my Dremel and sand down that edge. You make a divot with the sander. You sand too deep. It throws off the pattern. Cut straight, cut properly with a sharp knife. You won't need to Dremel that edge down. If you start cutting into the foam and you see the foam kind of have like little pieces inside that are sticking out, your knife is too dull. Go sharpen it, break off a blade, try it again. I think that's kind of it. We're at about the hour mark. I mean, the biggest thing, practice and don't rush. Those are the two biggest things today we can kind of agree with. Practice all of these techniques on scrap pieces of everything before you start making your actual cosplay, because you do not want to be trying this stuff early, or you do not want to be trying this stuff on your cosplay, because you're going to make mistakes. Everybody does. I have, Kamui has, Evil Ted has. Every cosplayer has made mistakes. Do as much testing beforehand and practice on scrap pieces of fabric, foam, whatever you want to do before you start getting into your cosplay. Save yourself some time and money. Folks, I appreciate it that you guys have spent some time with me. I appreciate it. We have been talking a lot about foam. I'm so glad you guys could spend some time here, especially you folks on TikTok and you folks on YouTube. If you're still here, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Folks on TikTok, if you can hit that follow button, I greatly appreciate it. I thank you for tuning in. If you want to be a part of the conversation next week on Monday Night Nerd, hop over to Myers Corp Cosplay. You can follow there, and that is where I'll be checking in all the chats. I really can't be doing this the whole time because it'll hurt my neck. Next week, we're going to skip cosplay. We're not going to talk about cosplay next week. We've been talking about cosplay a lot on this show past couple weeks. We're going to talk about movies. I want to talk about something that is a highly debatable topic. And I want to do this because I want you guys in chat to have an opinion. I want you guys to tell me what your top 10 is. And this top 10 will be my top 10 sequels. I'm going to go through my 10 favorite movie sequels. And they are not the ones that everyone thinks they are. I have some that are not deep cuts, but ones that'll be like, you think that is this? So I want you guys to come back next week, and I want you guys to tell me in the chat what you think of my list, and I also want to know what your list is. I want to know what your top 10 movie sequels are, because I bet you we're going to agree on a bunch, and I bet we're going to disagree on a bunch, and I like having those conversations. So, you guys got homework. Sorry. It's like I told you, we're back in the groove. This is back in school. You guys got homework for next week. Tell me what you guys think about what your top sequels are. And we'll come back here next week, Monday Night Nerd, 7 o'clock here on YouTube. And yeah, I hope you guys have a great night. I'm going to let you guys get out of here. I'm going to go down and I don't know what I'm going to do. Maybe watch a movie. We'll see. Have yourselves a good night, folks. I will see you very soon. I will probably see you on here or on TikTok at some point this week. Have a good night, folks. We'll see you soon. Love you all. Take care. Hey, thanks for watching Monday Night Nerd. If you enjoyed this content, please hit the subscribe button, like this content, and follow on social media for even more nerdy fun. See you soon.